Hello, my friends. Just back to revisiting a prophecy that I was given back in 2017. This prophecy, I looked back at it in 2020 whenever the Senate was first put to 50-50. And 2020 was the year, of course, of all of the Antifa and BLM riots and all of that kind of stuff, where there was blood in the streets. And I looked back at this prophecy, and I could see how what I had saw, that whenever the Senate was tied, that chaos would come back into it. But it didn't exactly fulfill this prophecy, as it speaks of something greater than what we saw in 2020 with the riots and that kind of stuff. The prophecy says, 50 here, 50 there, suddenly a wound is open, and through death will be resurrection. Look, all of the people gather to point fingers at each other. What are they all pointing for? As the rifle is loaded in the streets, they have taken up arms against their brothers. Children, women, men, all wounded by the sword. Those who live by the sword shall also die by it. And then the rest of the prophecy goes into, flee to the mountains, O daughter Israel. Your enemies surround you and are even inside of you. Lament, O children, O Israel. Look upon them and light your candles of salvation, which will not be extinguished. You, house of David, though your residence has fallen, not a hair from your head will be removed. As the house is divided and destroyed, so shall its heart pulse and raise the stones which have been removed. The Lord declares his decree. The lofty hills she has proclaimed her throne on, figuratively called Egypt, rulers of Babylon, the great eagle of the United States. So there's several different things in here that I can see playing out now. First off, you have this race in Georgia, the Senate race, as things have shaped out, as they've basically taken the election in 2022 the same as they did in 2020 presidential election. I said in 2020, after that presidential election, that there would be never again in the United States a fair election until there was a revolution, because they have figured out how to game the system of election so much in favor of those who are in power, those who are, you know them as the deep state, the one world government kind of people. And they pick who they want, which has been mainly Democrats or people that are Republican in name only. They pick and choose who they want. And they've figured out how to game the system, not only with how they're doing the votes themselves, such as with mail-in ballots. In other words, you send a ballot to somebody's house who knows nothing about any of it, who is told who to vote for, so they just vote for them and send them in, or somebody's there and fills out their ballot for them and sends it in. Of course, the system is gamed to begin with. They probably don't even need to put in false ballots like they needed to in 2020. They have it gamed so much that there's never going to come back that situation where they're going to put themselves in a position to lose power again. So you have the Senate now, which looked like it was going to turn Republican. Of course it doesn't, because they're not just going to give up the power. But in order to keep the peace, they have to keep it close. So what's a close way to do it? Well, right now the Senate stands 50 to 49. Democrats have 50, Republicans have 49, with one election yet to come. And that is the runoff election, which will happen in Georgia between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. This will decide whether the Senate goes to 51-49 or whether it goes to 50-50. And if this is what the prophecy that I was given is speaking about specifically, obviously I believe I'm going to see something to where I would know that that is exactly what it means. And the thing that really is, if you look at the prophecy and what I had been given to write, suddenly a wound is opened and through death will be resurrection. So in other words, you have somebody, some important figure that is going to be killed or seemingly killed. Now I could even think about, the beast who seemingly had a fatal head wound yet lived. I could even see that here to some extent. But if I'm thinking about what goes down December 6th during the runoff election, if it goes to where Herschel Walker somehow pulls this off and it gets to 50-50, I think there's going to be some major event that happens in Georgia. whether it be an assassination either of one of the candidates or somebody that is campaigning for one of the candidates, a la somebody like Trump or DeSantis, whoever they send. Some kind of an assassination happens. That's how this prophecy would look to fulfill. And by that, you would then have the streets filling back up with violence as one side will be pointed against the other side. And unlike in 2020, where it was a one-sided affair, the leftists did the damage, they rioted, they destroyed, they looted, they stole, they did all that, but it was one-sided. They had very little confrontation. People just let them do it. The police didn't even intervene in most cases. But this time, if this is the event that is to happen, there will be pushback. You will have both sides clearly represented out there in the streets, and the streets will turn to blood. As the rifle is loaded in the streets, they have taken up arms against their brothers. So you're going to have a war happening, basically. And then there's another thing in this which is interesting. It says, as the house is divided and destroyed, so shall its heart pulse and raise the stones which have been removed. You could look at the house right now of representatives is what's happening. It is divided, but this prophecy speaks of something beyond the division of just a political divide, meaning that the country is cut in half, essentially, from that point forward. And it's telling all of the people that are left in the country, which this prophecy is fulfilling, which I had stated, I was given the United States, I saw the great eagle, that when this would occur, that is a time of great division and strife. That's a time likened to a civil war. In a civil war and that kind of an event, it's always kick-started, generally speaking, by one smaller event, which then blows up because the people are already at each other's throats. They already don't trust each other. All they need is one kickstart event, one match thrown onto the fire in order to ignite the whole thing. And the country is in that position right now. It's been in that position for years. But it needs one catalytic event, one real event that speaks to both sides and gets them riled up. And I think that if this prophecy is to fulfill like I wrote it right now, then Walker will win that election this December 6th. And then it'll be 50 here and 50 there. The Senate will be even. The House will be divided. And we will see something tremendous happen within the nation of America. One side against another side, leading to something which is signs of the end times. Biblically speaking, there's a lot that still has to happen to set up all of the book of Revelation. It's currently all happening, but there's things that still need to be set in place. And one of the things that has to be set in place is a kingdom against itself, in which we're divided, but we're not to that point where it's literally taking up arms against each other. And I think that if that Senate goes like that, this could be that moment. This could be what the prophecy I was given speaks of, because everything that I wrote down on December 13 of 2017 matches exactly what I'm looking at right now heading into December of 2022. So something to look for, to see what exactly does happen. If this is even speaking about that, it's very hard myself to understand. I mean, I was given it, I knew what I was to write down, I saw the vision in my mind of the words that I was to write down, but I don't know what it means myself. I can only watch it form and happen. Like with all of these other prophecies that I was specifically given at that time frame, I've watched them materialize, but I don't know exactly what it means until after the fact, which is strange because it's prophecy. One would think I would know exactly what was going to come, but I don't. I only know I have these words to write down, and then once it happens, I can look back at those words and I can tell you that's what that was. But this time I'm going a little bit, I have vision, foresight to see enough in the future that all of these things are setting up to do exactly what this prophecy says. And now the only thing I can do is wait until December 6th to see what actually happens in that race. But if it's 50 here, 50 there, 50 Democrat, 50 Republican, then look out whenever there is a sudden wound, whenever somebody is assassinated, somebody of power. And the prophecy specifically speaks of a rifle loaded in the streets, meaning it would be probably performed in that measure. Something that is either a fatal head wound or appears to be a fatal head wound on somebody that kickstarts the division into something likened to a civil war. And I don't know whether it would actually be a full-out civil war, but it's definitely something that changes the country overnight, where things are not the same after it as they were. It's no longer divided. Something else happens that's even stronger than that after this event. So I look forward to see what happens this December 6th. There's no more fairness as far as the elections go in America. If America falls, the rest of the West will fall with her. We have not had fair elections since they have gamed the system. And if I'm just looking upon that, I would say that there's no way that the Republicans, Herschel Walker, is going to get enough votes, because they're going to game it also against him so that they have majority in the Senate. But if something happens that is unforeseen, something gets out of their control, or there's just so much support that they can't game the system enough, and he somehow gets into that position, they wouldn't really care politically, because they still have Kamala Harris to break the tie. The Democrats would still be in charge of the Senate even if Walker does win, but it's 50-50, that they have no breathing room whatsoever. And you have people like Joe Manchin in West Virginia that will vote with Republicans on occasion. So it would be beneficial for them to pick up this win, but they're not going to go out of their way. They're not going to get caught and exposed, because it really doesn't matter that much to them to expose everything else. They will sacrifice this election if there is overwhelming support in the voting ballots that they can't game enough. And then we could see this all happen. So I look forward to December 6th to see what actually does occur, and what actually happens whenever that does occur. But I do know if that does occur like that, the prophecy says to flee to the mountains. What that means is that the cities in America will no longer be a place where anybody would want to be in. To flee to the mountains means to get away from the cities, because in the cities is where this civil war, to speak of, will come to pass. It's where everything will play out. If you see this assassination, whenever the Senate turns to 50-50 and you live in the United States and you live in a city, it's time to get out of that city and go somewhere else, because those cities, nobody of righteousness will want to be anywhere near them during those days. God bless.